today we'll continue on with the right triangle, but in a different fashion, because not all triangles are 30-60 or 45-45. So we're going to apply another term called SOHCAHTOA. That's sine, cosine, and tangent. Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So what I have to learn how to do before I can use SOHCAHTOA is make sure that I can label the sides appropriately, because I need to know what side that I'm talking about in order to use sine, cosine, and tangent. You're also going to need a calculator that has sine, cosine, and tangent on it. You can find one on the computer if you need to, but let's start with labeling opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Your angle will be indicated in here, so question mark is the angle that you're looking at. I usually go from that one immediately. That's the first one that I label, and that one is the opposite. So we can just, I guess I can just do it with O, opposite. And then as far as the other two sides go, one is adjacent and one is hypotenuse. And you can tell the hypotenuse because it is the longer of the two sides. And it's also the one that's across from the right angle. So the hypotenuse will be the longer of the two. The adjacent is the last one that's left. So you just start by drawing the arrow down. That's opposite or over, wherever question mark is on the next one. It's going to be over. And then of the last two, across from the right angle, or the longest one is the hypotenuse, and the adjacent is the last one. I always label the adjacent last. Again, find the question mark, draw across, there's my opposite. Then I have of the last two sides left. Hypotenuse is the long one, the one across from the right angle, adjacent is the other one. Draw it over, opposite. Of the two left, hypotenuse is the longest. Adjacent is the last one that's not labeled. There's a couple practice problems for you to do, so I'm just kind of going to skip through those. And talking about the sine ratio, when I talked about SOHCAHTOA at the beginning, the sine of an angle is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. And so we're going to set that up. That's what that stands for. That's what the SO part stands for. Then we have the KA and the TOA, kind of in the same way. So sine, abbreviated SIN, of an angle, I'll just put A in there, of an angle, A stands for an angle, is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle, again that A is an angle, is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And lastly, the tangent of an angle is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. And I'm going to have to use my calculator to solve these. It just uses a little bit of algebra. What I have to do is take a look at what I'm given. I'm given that 45-degree angle. I go across from that. X is the opposite. Of the other two sides that are left, the one that's across from the right angle is not labeled, but it's the longest side. That's the hypotenuse, and the other side that I know is the adjacent. Because the hypotenuse doesn't have any marking on it, it doesn't have an X, it doesn't have a number, I can't use any one of these things that uses the hypotenuse, which means I'm limited to the tangent. So when I set this up, I say the tangent of 45, because that's the angle, that's what the A stands for, is equal to the opposite, which is X, over the hypotenuse, which is 17. And then I need to get the X alone, so I'm just going to multiply that out. You have to make sure that your calculator is in degrees. Mine's in radians, so I'm going to have to hit until I get select degrees. If you don't know how to do that, just let me know. But mine's in degrees now. It says DEG. Yours might say just a D on the bottom, but I do. If the X is on top and the number is on the bottom, it is the number times that tangent. So I'm going to do 17 times the tan, let me say tan of 45. I hit equals, and I get my answer, which is 17. So x is 17. Next one, I'll go across from the angle, that's the opposite. And then across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. The last is the side. There's the adjacent. Again, I have opposite and adjacent, so the tangent of 49, that's the angle measure, is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Again, I'm going to take my calculator and plug that in. So it is, because that number's on the bottom, I do 10 times the tangent of 49. And so this time I get x equals 11.5. You can just round them off, that doesn't matter. Set up my next one. Across from the angle, I have the opposite. Across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. The one I don't know is adjacent. Now I need to know which one uses O and H, because the O and the H are the ones. So I go back up here, which one? Remember, it's SOHCAHTOA. Sine uses O and H. So it's the sine of 52 equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. Again, the x is on the top, the number is on the bottom, so when I plug this in my calculator, I'm going to do 10 times the sine this time. Oh, no, it didn't do 10. 10 times the sine of the angle. And in this case, it's 52. Get my answer. I got 7.88, so x is about 7.88. My last one, I have the opposite. Across from the right angle is the hypotenuse, and the other one is adjacent. This one has A and H. So I go back up. Which one uses A and H? That's the cosine one. The cosine of the angle is equal to the opposite, the adjacent. Got that? Put that wrong. The adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now, this is what I was talking about before. Notice how in all the rest of them, the number was in the bottom. It was x over a number, x over a number, x over a number. This one, the number's on top. And because the number's on top, you do it the opposite. When the number's on the bottom, you multiply, because you're multiplying it out. When the number is on the top, you actually divide. So when I plug this one in, I'm going to do 15 divided by the cosine of 32. And then that'll get my answer, 17.68. I'll just go 17.7. X is roughly 17.7. I want to run through the last ones with you, just kind of in the same thing, just setting them up and going. So I got the opposite and the adjacent. That uses tangent. The tangent of 58 is the opposite over the adjacent. Again, I've got another problem where the x is in the bottom, so I have to do divide. So this is 18 divided by the tangent of 58. So I get x is roughly 11.2. Again, I go opposite. The other one here is adjacent. I have another tangent problem. The tangent of 51 is the opposite over the adjacent. The number's on the bottom, so I multiply 20 times the tangent of 51. So I get 24.7-ish for x, and I'll let you try a few on your own. So your homework today is to do page 4, 1 through 10 in your homework packet. As always, just share it with me when you're done.